There is something beneath Machu Picchu that could completely change how we understand this place. For almost 500 years, the city remained abandoned, hiding possible structures and secrets beneath its terraces and temples. Between 2023 and 2025, studies using DNA, LiDAR, and satellite imagery revealed unexpected evidence beneath the surface, something that appears not only older or larger, but different from what was previously thought. Shortly afterward, decisions by the Peruvian government raised even more suspicions about the significance of these discoveries. The most striking finding came from the genetic analysis conducted at Yale University. The remains of 34 individuals buried at the site showed unusual genetic diversity, with varied and distant origins. This contradicts the traditional idea that Machu Picchu was merely an exclusive retreat for Emperor Pachacuti. Instead, the data suggests that the site may have functioned as a meeting point or convergence point for different peoples, something far more complex than a simple royal refuge. The data did not support this narrative. The genetic profiles of those 34 individuals did not correspond to the typical populations of the Inca Andes. Not even remotely. The genetic diversity was impressive. People of completely different origins, from different regions, belonging to varied linguistic groups, all buried together in a single location. Some showed traits of coastal populations hundreds of kilometers to the west. Others were associated with groups much further north. Later, Dr. Berger described the results as something totally unexpected. The panorama that emerged on the screens bore no resemblance to a real retreat. That was something else entirely. Something far more complex and far more intentional than anyone could have imagined. And then Salazar found the 6 women. 6 female remains, among others, carried DNA that did not point to the Andes, but rather to the Amazon rainforest. People from low-altitude regions, from the jungle, found at an altitude of 2,440 meters, in the clouds, in a place that was supposedly reserved for the Inca elite. It is necessary to imagine the magnitude of that distance. The Amazon basin and Machu Picchu are separated by some of the most hostile geographies on the planet. You start from a dense, suffocating forest, practically at sea level. The humidity is so intense that you can almost taste it in the air. Then the climb crosses forests shrouded in mist, nearly vertical paths, narrow trails, often narrower than one's own shoulders. Icy altitudes where the air becomes so thin it makes the lungs burn. The temperature can plummet by about 20 degrees in a single day. The terrain is constantly changing: mud, ice, exposed rocks. Even today, with modern equipment, appropriate clothing, and satellite communication, people still lose their lives on routes like these. And yet, 500 years ago, these women traveled this route, or were forced to do so. One specific case made Salazar interrupt everything he was doing. A mother and daughter buried close to each other. When the team analyzed the isotopes present in the bones, the chemical composition revealed 2 completely distinct life trajectories. The mother's bones indicated one dietary and geographic origin. The daughter's, a completely different one. They lived in different places, at different times in their lives. Different diets, different water sources, different environments. The mother grew up consuming the foods of one region, breathing its air, drinking from its rivers. The daughter did the same, but in another place. 2 women connected by blood, separated by geography, and reunited in death at an altitude of 2,440 meters in a citadel that no one should question. Salazar stared at those results for a long time before registering any conclusion. This was not random migration. It was planned, intentional. These women were taken to Machu Picchu for a purpose, transported hundreds of kilometers across one of the most unforgiving terrains on Earth. Someone decided they needed to be there. Someone with enough power to move people across an entire empire like pieces on a chessboard. The question that no one within the Peruvian government wanted to answer was simple and brutal. Why? Why bring women from the Amazon to a fortress in the mountains? What was their role? And what does their presence reveal about what Machu Picchu really was? But that wasn't even the strangest part. Because while Salazar and Berger were analyzing bones in New Haven, Another team was already investigating from the sky, and what they found made the DNA data seem like just a detail, what the lasers revealed. In 2024, Eri Karamanica and a team of remote sensing experts flew over areas of Machu Picchu where no tourist has ever set foot. They used drones equipped with LiDAR technology. LiDAR fires millions of laser pulses into the ground and builds three-dimensional maps of what is hidden beneath vegetation, soil, and even surface layers of rock. It's like removing the jungle layer by layer, seeing what the human eye cannot. Drones flew over densely forested slopes surrounding the famous terraces and temples, areas that, for decades, were classified as untouched nature, natural jungle, nothing to see. But something appeared. 12 structures. 12 completely unknown constructions and platforms, hidden beneath centuries of vegetation. Structures that had never been recorded on maps, surveys, or archaeological studies in 500 years. Some exhibited characteristics typical of ceremonial platforms. Others appeared to be residential or administrative areas. But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that they were there. They always were. And nobody knew. And here's the most unsettling detail. The areas where these structures were found are restricted zones. Tourists don't have access. Most researchers don't either. They are regions controlled by the Peruvian government, closed for decades. There has never been a clear public explanation as to why these areas were restricted, nor why they were never prioritized for study. 12 structures, hidden for 5 centuries, discovered in weeks, in places where no one could look, while at the same time, plans were quietly being revived to transform the entire region into a destination with up to 8 million visitors per year. What if 12 structures were hidden just beyond the known boundaries? How many more could exist in the surrounding valleys? What was the true size of this complex? Are we looking at a single citadel, or just the visible center of something much larger? Keep that question in mind, because the next discovery made everything even more disturbing. Impossible. In 2025, a geologist named Dr. Rualdo Menegat from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil was analyzing satellite images when he noticed something in the geological data beneath Machu Picchu. Something that made him run his models 3 times before he could believe what he was seeing. 2 major geological faults, each stretching for approximately 175 kilometers, run directly beneath the citadel. Not near it, not in the vicinity, directly beneath it, forming a perfect X. The point of intersection is almost exactly where the main temple complex is located. Now, for most people, geological faults mean one thing: instability, earthquakes, collapse. But when Menegat and his team ran computer simulations, more than 1,000 seismic scenarios covering all possible magnitudes and directions, the results shattered all expectations. Each simulation presented the same result. The intersection of these 2 faults is extraordinarily stable. The opposing tectonic forces essentially cancel each other out, creating a privileged geological point where the ground hardly moves, even during significant seismic events. In other words, the Incas built their most sacred site precisely at the most earthquake-resistant point in the entire region, a point that we were only able to identify in the 21st century with orbiting satellites and supercomputers. And they found it in the 15th century, without instruments, without formal writing, without any technology that we can explain. The city of Cusco itself has been devastated by earthquakes several times throughout history. Entire colonial districts have been destroyed. Churches have collapsed. Thousands died. But Machu Picchu still stands, for 500 years, without significant structural damage caused by seismic activity. Never. Either the Incas had impossible miraculous luck in choosing this single perfect spot among thousands of possible locations in the mountains, or they knew something about the ground beneath their feet that we are only now beginning to understand. And there's one more detail. When Menegat published this data, the Peruvian government said nothing. Total silence surrounded the discoveries, but they revealed something astonishing. Machu Picchu is, to a large extent, an invisible city. Only about 40% of its engineering is above ground. The rest is buried, forming a complex underground infrastructure. Excavations have revealed advanced drainage systems, foundations, and water channels that support the entire structure. The visible terraces are not only agricultural, but part of a system that controls water, prevents erosion, and protects the mountain against earthquakes. Even without modern tools, iron or mortar, the Incas created an extremely efficient system that has been working for over 500 years, so advanced that it rivals and sometimes surpasses current engineering solutions. But the precision doesn't end underground. At the highest point of Machu Picchu, there is a pillar carved from granite called Intihuatana. The name means the place where the sun is tied. For decades, archaeologists treated it as a ceremonial element, a ritual object. Interesting, but not functional. Something to photograph and move on from, until someone decided to measure it, with precision, using GPS satellites. And what they discovered completely changed the interpretation. 3 degrees. The Intihuatana stone is aligned just 3 degrees from true north, not magnetic north, which varies over time and changes with the centuries, but from the actual geographic north, the planet's axis of rotation. This single carved stone functions as a solar calendar, marking solstices and equinoxes with an accuracy of about 15 minutes, year after year, century after century, without adjustments, without recalibration, without any kind of maintenance. The level of astronomical precision encoded in this block of granite corresponds to the standards used today in the calibration of modern satellites, 500 years ago. At an altitude of 2,440 meters, hand-carved from rough granite by people who supposedly didn't possess telescopes, nor precision instruments, nor advanced mathematics, at least according to what we know. Now keep all of this in mind at the same time. An earthquake-proof positioning on an invisible geological X. 60% of the site still buried underground. 12 unknown structures found in restricted areas. DNA evidence suggests a deliberately assembled multi-ethnic population from across an empire. And an astronomical alignment that rivals modern technology. The question no one wants to ask out loud is the most obvious one. How much of Machu Picchu has actually been discovered? 10%? 20%? What else is buried beneath that mountain? If you're connecting the dots as I am, you've already realized that this doesn't add up. Subscribe to Stellar Insights. I cover these discoveries and the decisions behind them every week, because what happens next is where the timeline begins to break down. 3 weeks, from protection to destruction. January 2026. The Peruvian Ministry of Culture approves a master plan for the protection of Machu Picchu, conservation guidelines, visitor management, preservation, goals extending to 2046. 20 years of planned care. On paper, exactly what all the scientists had been demanding. 3 weeks later, February 2026, Peru approves Chinchero International Airport. 3 weeks, from protection to flood. Signs of this had been emerging for years, while LiDAR scanning restricted areas. While Menegat published his geological data, the Peruvian government quietly revived an airport project that had been stalled for 15 years. Corruption investigations involving the Brazilian construction company Odebrecht had frozen contracts. Billions disappeared in bribery schemes in 12 countries. Presidents fell. Officials were arrested. Chinchero Airport was buried in this scandal. But in early 2026, the project not only returned, it was accelerated. Goal: operation by the end of 2027. 18 months between approval and landings. Projected capacity: 8 million visitors per year, about 200% above current levels. All this concentrated in a valley that already faces limitations in infrastructure, water, and waste management. And the runway? It is being built directly on 600-year-old Inca agricultural terraces in Chinchero. And these are not ruins. They are still functional terraces, 6 centuries and still operating. The irrigation works. The drainage system works. The structure holds up without a single repair. The same engineering tradition that built the underground systems of Machu Picchu. The same techniques, the same seemingly impossible precision. But there's one detail that should make anyone stop. The capacity study, the official report that determines whether the region can sustainably support 8 million visitors, will only be ready in September 2026, 7 months after the airport's approval. The airport was approved before the study that should justify its existence was completed. The report will be released in September, and it will most likely confirm what all independent analyses have already indicated. The Sacred Valley simply cannot handle that volume. Water systems, roads, waste management, archaeological preservation, none of that scales to that level. And yet, the airport will be built. The decision was made before the data existed. 8 million tourists a year means revenue at every level. Airlines, hotels, transportation, concessions, taxes. This money doesn't go to archaeologists. It doesn't fund preservation. It flows to the same networks that have controlled infrastructure contracts in Peru for decades. Follow the money. It always shows who benefits and who decides. And the scientists? They haven't remained silent. Dr. Salazar, researchers from Cambridge, Japanese archaeological institutions, all have issued warnings. The impact of mass tourism, heavy traffic, vibration, humidity, construction, represents a direct and measurable threat to the underground infrastructure that has survived for 500 years. Peru's response? Silence. No refutation, no counter-argument, no response to a single piece of data. Just silence and construction schedules. On one side, peer-reviewed research, genetic evidence, LiDAR mapping, geological modeling, and 5 centuries of structural proof. On the other, revenue projections and the design of a runway. And what about the terraces that are about to be destroyed? Once they disappear, the living laboratory that allows us to understand how the underground systems of Machu Picchu were built will disappear along with them, forever, which is what they don't want studied. So, here we are, and I need you to understand this clearly. Scientists have spent 5 years revealing what Machu Picchu truly is. Not an emperor's vacation palace, not a ceremonial retreat, but a carefully engineered nerve center of an empire, genetically diverse, geologically accurate, built on an invisible alignment that only modern technologies can map. More than half is still hidden beneath the surface, aligned with celestial patterns with impressive precision, a hydraulic system that remains functional after 5 centuries, and structures capable of withstanding earthquakes that destroyed modern cities. Machu Picchu is not just an archaeological site. It's an extremely sophisticated system, far more complex than any traditional explanation has ever been able to encompass. And that's precisely why what's happening now raises so many questions. After years of studies demonstrating the fragility of the ecosystem and the complexity of the location, the expected response would be caution, protection, time to understand. But that's not what happened. The timeline accelerated abruptly. A capacity report projected for September 2026, an airport scheduled to be operational by the end of 2027, a project that had been stalled for over a decade, now moving forward in a matter of months. And that changes the tone of the story. Because when you look at the sequence of events, the question ceases to be just about tourism. It becomes about timing, years of silence, no significant movement. Then, in a few years, a series of discoveries begins to completely reshape the understanding of the place. Genetic studies point to a structured multi-ethnic center, not just an imperial retreat. LiDAR scans reveal hidden structures in restricted areas. Geological analyses suggest an unusual alignment of the very foundation. And then, right after that, acceleration. Not gradual, not careful, immediate. This raises an unsettling hypothesis. What if the value of this place lies not only in the history it tells, but in what has not yet been fully studied? What if what remains buried, in restricted zones, in unexplored structures, is more valuable under control than under open investigation? This isn't about claiming a conspiracy. It's about observing that the timeline doesn't fit together simply. Because when discoveries increase the importance and fragility of a place, the logical response would be to slow down. But here, everything is accelerating. Reports have been published. Discoveries have been made, old theories have been debunked, and the institutional reaction? Silence, followed by swift action. The question now is not just what Machu Picchu was, it's what it still holds, and whether these decisions were made long before the public even realized there was something to question. The countdown has begun, and with it grows the feeling that we are still far from fully understanding what truly lies beneath that mountain.